Discover the bizarre laws of ancient civilizations, from Spartan warriors to Persian customs. Laws have always been a cornerstone of human society, dictating behavior, ensuring justice, and maintaining order. Ancient civilizations crafted a diverse range of legal codes, some of which seem perfectly reasonable to modern sensibilities, while others appear baffling or outright bizarre. These laws were not merely arbitrary. They reflected the values, fears, and norms of the societies that enacted them. By examining some of the strangest legal codes from the ancient world, we can better understand the unique priorities and beliefs that shaped their daily lives. From the rigid discipline of the Spartan warriors to the eccentric customs of the Persian Empire, here are some of the most unusual and curious laws that governed ancient civilizations. Spartan warriors, laws of extreme discipline. The ancient Greek city-state of Sparta was legendary for its militaristic society, which revolved entirely around preparing for war. The laws governing Spartan life were strict and often brutal, designed to mold citizens into perfect soldiers from a very young age. Spartan boys were taken from their families at the age of 7 to begin their training in the agog, a state-sponsored education system that emphasized physical endurance, combat skills, and unquestioning obedience. The Spartan legal system was less concerned with individual rights and more focused on fostering a culture of extreme discipline and unity. Bizarre law. One of the most unusual aspects of Spartan law was the requirement that men, even after marriage, continue to live in communal military mess halls known as syssitia. This practice was meant to ensure that Spartans prioritized their loyalty to the state over their personal lives. Marriage was seen as a necessary function for producing future soldiers, but it was not to interfere with a man's military obligations. The syssitia were also governed by strict rules. Spartan men could not indulge in excessive food or drink, as moderation was considered a key aspect of military discipline. In addition, Spartan law included strange provisions for dealing with newborns. Infants were inspected by elders shortly after birth, and if they were deemed weak or deformed, they were abandoned to die in the wilderness. This grim practice was intended to ensure that only the strongest and healthiest children would survive to become future warriors. While the Spartans are often glorified for their martial prowess, these laws reveal the darker side of their society, a world where human life was expendable in the pursuit of military excellence. The Babylonian Code of Hammurabi, justice carved in stone. The Code of Hammurabi, dating back to around 1754 BCE, is one of the oldest and most famous legal codes in history. This extensive set of laws governed ancient Babylon and included everything from criminal justice to trade regulations, family law, and property rights. However, while some of these laws seem reasonable to modern sensibilities, others are shockingly brutal and strange. Hammurabi's code was famously inscribed on large stone steles and placed in public areas so that citizens could easily see the laws that governed their lives. Bizarre law. One of the most peculiar aspects of the Code of Hammurabi was its strict adherence to the principle of lex talionis, or an eye for an eye. This meant that punishments were often literal reflections of the crime committed. For instance, if a man struck another man and caused him to lose an eye, the punishment was that the attacker would also have his eye removed. If a builder constructed a house that collapsed and killed the owner, the builder's son could be put to death as punishment. This harsh interpretation of justice often resulted in extreme consequences, turning the legal system into one where retribution was central to the concept of fairness. Another strange law from the Code of Hammurabi involved doctors and the practice of medicine. If a doctor performed surgery on a patient with a bronze lancet and the patient died, the doctor's hands would be cut off as punishment for his failure. While this law may have been intended to prevent medical malpractice, it also likely deterred many from practicing medicine at all, considering the severe consequences for failure. Ancient Egyptian burial laws. Preserving the soul for the afterlife. The ancient Egyptians placed an enormous amount of importance on the afterlife, and their burial customs were designed to ensure that the deceased could successfully journey to the next world. Egyptian law was deeply intertwined with religious practices, and specific laws governed the process of mummification, burial, and the treatment of the dead. Pharaohs, nobles, and even commoners were subject to strict guidelines to ensure that their souls could pass through the afterlife unscathed. However, some of these laws were particularly peculiar and reveal the Egyptians' deep preoccupation with the spiritual realm. Bizarre law. One of the more unusual burial laws in ancient Egypt involved the mummification process, which was considered a sacred and highly specialized practice. Those responsible for mummifying bodies had to undergo rigorous purification rituals before they were allowed to handle a corpse. This included shaving all the hair from their bodies, bathing in sacred waters, and abstaining from certain foods for a period of time. These rituals were believed to purify the embalmers and protect them from the spiritual dangers associated with death. Another bizarre law dealt with grave robbing, which was a serious crime in ancient Egypt, punishable by death or mutilation. However, in some cases, laws allowed for a degree of leniency if the thief could return the stolen goods before being caught. The Egyptians believed that disturbing the dead would result in dire spiritual consequences, not only for the thief, but also for the deceased, whose afterlife could be jeopardized if their tomb was violated. The Persian Empire, laws of hospitality, and the pursuit of truth. The Persian Empire, under the rule of Cyrus the Great and his successors, was known for its sophisticated legal system and emphasis on justice and fairness. However, Persian law also reflected the cultural values of hospitality and truthfulness, which were considered essential virtues in Persian society. These values were often enshrined in law, leading to some unusual legal practices. Bizarre law. In ancient Persia, hospitality was not just a social expectation, it was codified into law. One particularly strange law mandated that anyone seeking shelter in a Persian household had to be offered protection, even if they were a criminal or an enemy of the state. Refusing to provide shelter to a guest was considered a grave offense, punishable by law. This law was rooted in the Zoroastrian belief that hospitality was a sacred duty, and failure to protect a guest was seen as an affront to the gods. Another curious aspect of Persian law was the strict punishment for lying. The Persians placed a high value on truthfulness, and lying was considered one of the worst crimes a person could commit. The punishment for lying varied depending on the severity of the falsehood, but could include whipping, imprisonment, or even death. The Persians believed that lying disrupted the moral order of the world and that a society built on deceit could not prosper. As a result, Persian children were raised with the understanding that truthfulness was the highest virtue, and even minor deceptions could lead to harsh penalties. Roman laws on public behavior, regulating daily life. The Roman legal system was one of the most advanced of the ancient world, influencing legal practices for centuries to come. However, while Roman law laid the groundwork for many modern legal concepts, it also included some highly specific and bizarre rules governing daily life. The Romans were deeply concerned with maintaining public order and morality, leading to the creation of laws that dictated everything from clothing choices to dining etiquette. Bizarre law. One of the more unusual Roman laws was the restriction on wearing purple clothing. The color purple was associated with the Roman emperor and members of the imperial family, as it was made from a rare and expensive dye. Ordinary citizens were forbidden from wearing purple, as doing so was seen as an attempt to imitate nobility, which could be considered treasonous. Violating this law could result in severe punishment, including fines or imprisonment. Another peculiar law governed behavior at banquets and public feasts. Roman sumptuary laws restricted the amount of money that could be spent on food and entertainment, as the Roman elite sought to curb excessive indulgence and promote modest living. Eating while standing up at a banquet was also considered a breach of decorum and could result in a fine or public censure. These laws reflected the Roman belief in maintaining proper conduct and avoiding excess, even during social gatherings. Ancient Athens, the strange practice of ostracism. While Athens is often celebrated as the birthplace of democracy, its legal system included some unusual practices that seem at odds with modern democratic values. One of the strangest laws in ancient Athens was the practice of ostracism, which allowed citizens to vote to exile a political figure from the city for a period of 10 years. This practice was intended to prevent any individual from becoming too powerful and threatening the democratic order. Bizarre law. The law of ostracism was unique in that it did not require the individual in question to have committed any crime. Simply being perceived as a threat to the state was enough to warrant exile. Each year, the citizens of Athens would vote on whether an ostracism should take place, and if the answer was yes, They would write the name of the person they wished to ostracize on a piece of pottery called an ostracon. If a person received enough votes, they were forced to leave Athens for 10 years. During their exile, they were allowed to retain their property, and they could return to public life once the exile period was over. However, the practice was often used to settle political rivalries and remove potential competitors from the public stage. Conclusion: the bizarre laws of ancient civilizations offer a fascinating window into the values, beliefs, and priorities of the societies that created them. While many of these laws seem strange or even absurd to modern sensibilities, they served important functions in their respective cultures. Whether designed to enforce military discipline, ensure fairness through retribution, promote truthfulness, or regulate public behavior, these laws reflect the complex and sometimes eccentric ways in which ancient civilizations sought to govern their people. By studying these laws, we gain a deeper understanding of the ancient world and the ways in which human societies have evolved over time. Despite their often harsh or peculiar nature, these legal codes remind us that the quest for order, justice, and morality has been a constant throughout history, even when the methods used were remarkably different from our own.